We all know that our thoughts can have a huge impact on how we feel. But did you know that there is one thought pattern in particular that can destroy your mental health? And no, it's not negative thinking. In fact, this thought pattern can happen whether you're thinking positive or negative thoughts. So stay tuned to find out what it is and how to stop it, so it doesn't ruin your life. Before we get into it, if you're new here, welcome. I'm a cognitive neuroscientist and mental health educator. I make weekly videos on anxiety, depression, trauma, relationships, and more. Hit subscribe if that sounds interesting. Also, this video is inspired by a community post that went viral. So let's jump into it. Thought no. 1. What would people think? This is a question that I hear very frequently from clients when they come to me. They are worried about being judged for having certain thoughts or feelings. Let's take a situation like feeling angry at your partner. You may have learned growing up that anger is something that we should unfeel or that we should unexpress. So now, when you feel this emotion, you think to yourself, what would people think if they knew I felt this way? Or even worse, you may start judging yourself for feeling this way. Thoughts like I shouldn't be feeling this way. How could I be feeling this way? Or even worse, I'm broken for feeling this way. These kinds of thoughts are extremely toxic because they cause you to experience even more distress and often lead to dissociation or other maladaptive coping strategies like substance use. In my work with clients, I help them challenge these thoughts by asking them questions like, do you actually know what people would think? Often they don't. They just assume, and their assumptions are usually far worse than reality. So I help them come up with alternative explanations for why people might not judge them. And then I help them consider the likelihood of those alternative explanations being true. For example, let's say someone didn't show up for a shift that they were supposed to work. Now let us imagine that this person was someone that you worked with, and they never called off work early before. What would you think happened? Well, maybe they had an emergency come up. Maybe they got into a car accident, their house caught fire, or they had a family emergency. Now let's say that this person was someone that was always calling off work last minute. Now what would you think? You might start to think that they aren't a very responsible person. See how you came up with different conclusions based on the same exact situation. This is what we call a rational and objective way of thinking. And it's a skill that we can all learn to do in any situation. If you want to learn more about how to use this skill to challenge your own thoughts, check out my video on the top 3 cognitive distortions. Thought number 2. Assuming that how you feel right now is how you will feel forever. A lot of times when we experience intense emotions like grief or joy, we assume that those emotions will last forever. When we lose a loved one, we think we will never be able to move on or be happy again. When we fall in love, we think that we have found the one and that we will never love anyone else the way that we love them. We assume that these feelings will dictate our future and determine what choices we should make. But here's the thing, emotions are just emotions. They are meant to pass. The only time that we experience emotions like this is because our brain is trying to alert us to something. Our brain is trying to tell us to pay attention to something. But once we have paid that attention, the emotion should subside. So let's say you meet someone online who you really hit it off with. You talk for hours and you both agree that you have a lot in common. You have a great first date and everything seems to be going well. Now, it is important to remember that just because things are going well now does not mean that they will never end. It doesn't mean that your relationship will last forever. Of course, it's possible that you meet the love of your life and you live happily ever after, but it's also possible that you grow apart. You learn that you don't have as much in common as you thought. You find out that you have different goals or values. The point is, just because things are good now doesn't mean that they will never end. The same is true for every other emotion. Just because you're having a great day now doesn't mean that nothing bad will ever happen to you. Just because you're healthy now doesn't mean that you will never get sick. Just because you have a job now doesn't mean that you will never be unemployed. The point is that we cannot predict the future, and assuming that we can is a thought pattern that will lead to unnecessary suffering. Instead of focusing on all of the worst-case scenarios, try to focus on the present moment. Try to enjoy the good times while you have them, and know that the bad times will eventually pass too. Thought no. 3. Catastrophizing. Catastrophizing is when we think of the worst-case scenario and convince ourselves that it is absolutely going to happen. Let's say that you are running late to work. There is traffic and you're starting to feel stressed. You may start catastrophizing about the situation by thinking, if I don't get there soon, my boss is going to fire me. My boss is going to fire me. I'm going to lose my job. I'm going to be homeless. I'm going to starve to death. When we start catastrophizing, we can convince ourselves that the worst-case scenario is not only likely, but inevitable. But here's the thing, most of the time, the worst-case scenario does not happen. Most of the time, you do not die. Most of the time, you do not get fired. Most of the time, you do not end up homeless. Catastrophizing is a thought pattern that can cause a lot of unnecessary distress. It can make us feel helpless and out of control. But the truth is that we are more in control than we think. We have the power to change our thoughts, and we have the power to change our actions. So next time you find yourself catastrophizing, ask yourself, is this thought helpful? Is it accurate? And is it under my control? If the answer is no, then it's probably not worth holding on to that thought. Thought number 4. Mind reading. This is the act of assuming that we know what another person is thinking without actually asking them. Let's say you are working on a project with a group of people. You put a lot of time and effort into your part of the project, but the other people do not seem to put in the same amount of effort. You may start mind reading and assume that they think that you are lazy, or that they don't respect you. But the truth is that you do not know what they're thinking. You are just making an assumption. Mind reading is a thought pattern that can cause a lot of unnecessary conflict. It can make us feel like we are not understood or that people are out to get us. But the truth is that we cannot read other people's minds. We can only observe their behavior and make inferences based on that behavior. So if you want to know what someone is thinking, the best thing to do is to ask them. Thought number 5. Labeling. This is the act of assigning a label to ourselves or to others. Let's say you make a mistake at work. You may start labeling yourself as stupid or incompetent. Or let's say that someone cuts you off in traffic. You may start labeling them as a road rage idiot. When we label ourselves or others, we are making a sweeping generalization. We are saying that this one behavior or trait defines who we are or who someone is. But the truth is that we are more than our mistakes. We are more than one bad traffic day. Labeling is a thought pattern that can cause a lot of shame and guilt. It can make us feel like we are not good enough, or that we are not worthy of love and belonging. But the truth is that we are all human. We all make mistakes. And it's important to remember that one bad day does not define us. These are just 5 of many thought patterns that can destroy your mental health. But the good news is that we can learn to recognize these thoughts and we can learn to challenge them. So keep an eye out for my next video on the top 3 ways to challenge your thoughts. If you liked this video, you'll probably like that one too. Thanks for watching and take care.